Today we're going to talk about reflexive verbs. When you look at a verb that's reflexive, at the end of the infinitive, you're going to see a se. That's a really easy way to tell that something is reflexive. But when used in context, you may have to think about it a little bit further because reflexive pronouns can look like direct or indirect object pronouns or the impersonal se. So how do you know? Well, consider the action itself. Who is receiving the action of the verb? If the person doing the action is also receiving the action, then it's reflexive. Think of it this way. When you wash your hands or brush your teeth or comb your hair in a mirror, you're looking at the subject, you are the subject, and you're also seeing the subject do the action to him or herself. That's the whole idea behind reflexive. Now look at these examples here. Me pinto los labios. I put on lipstick every day. Of course, that's not a word-for-word translation. In fact, look at that even closer. You notice anything? Literally what you're saying is, I paint myself. Me pinto, first of all. Second of all, we're saying los labios. If we're doing it to ourselves, it'd be redundant to say mis labios, right? Therefore, when you say in English, I paint my lips, literally, I put on lipstick, you have to note whose it is. Mis labios. But that wouldn't work in Spanish. Los labios. Likewise, if you say me lavo and then follow up with mis manos, that's redundant. Of course, they're your hands. If they weren't your hands, you wouldn't be doing it to yourself. Now, the verbs that are reflexive can also be used in, well, what we'll say a normal way, what you've always used without it being reflexive. For example, look at the second one. Elena se prepara para salir. Elena gets ready to go out. She's preparing herself to leave. You can prepare lots of things. Preparo un sándwich, preparo la comida para mis hijos, preparo para mi examen mañana. If you're preparing yourself, then it becomes reflexive. Look at the verb in the box here, levantarse. You can get yourself up. You can stand up. You can also lift other things. Levanto pesas, levanto las cajas. But if you're getting yourself up, if you're lifting yourself, then it's reflexive. Here's another way that you can tell that a verb is reflexive. Look at the pronoun me and the conjugation of the verb, levanto. Of course, that denotes yo. Me is essentially a mí, to myself. I'm lifting myself. I'm getting myself up. If the pronoun and the verb are both in the first person, then it's reflexive. That's true for the other forms too. Te is not the equivalent of tú. You can just as easily as say, tú te levantas. You get yourself up. Usted, él, or ella take on the se pronoun, as does usted, ellos, and ellas. It's not impersonal. There are people here. People always get this confused. Nosotros and nos, thinking that nos is a short form of nosotros. It's not. Nosotros is the doer. Nos is the receiver. We're doing it to ourselves. Nos levantamos. We get ourselves up. Now, what you do with that pronoun is sometimes flexible. If you put it in front of the verb, most of the time you're not going to have a problem. In fact, in this case, you really can't command yourself to do anything to yourself. And so let's always put it in front of the verb. The only time you need to put a pronoun after the verb is when it's a command. But since we can't command ourselves, just forget it. Put it in front of the verb. You're never going to have a problem. But notice below, there are options. Él está vistiéndose. He's dressing himself. Using that syntax, it makes a lot of sense. It's easier for us as English speakers rather than él se está vistiendo. Both are correct. Voy a levantarme. I'm going to get up myself. I'm going to get myself up. Me voy a levantar. What do you notice about those two and the third? What conditions do you need to put the pronoun at the end? First of all, if you have a gerund, ando or yendo, you can put it at the end of that. If you have an infinitive, you can put it at the end of that. Otherwise, you're always going to put it in front of the verb. When there are two verbs, you're going to put it in front of the first verb, not in the middle. And again, it's always a good idea to put it in front because the only time that you have to put it at the end is a command. But we can't use commands here.